welcome to the 99th episode of Win Over Depression. I am your host, Tamara Trotter. This podcast is dedicated to those who suffer with a mental illness and try every single day to live and to feel better. It's also dedicated to those who know someone who suffers with a mental illness and is trying to understand them better. Today, we'll be talking about momentum and how important it is that when we build momentum, we keep going, we don't stop, and we never look back. Remember, you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Music, Google Play, and Spotify. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, also called Win Over Depression. So what is momentum? Momentum is the force of speed of an object in motion or the increase in the rate of development of a process. So what is another word for momentum? Stimulus, boost, spur, impulse, impetus, incentive, motivation, power, propulsion, force, thrust, and push. So what happens when we gain momentum? When we gain momentum, it is something that keeps developing or happening more quickly and keeps becoming less likely to stop. So when we are talking about pushing ourselves to get to a better place, we are looking to build momentum because the momentum is the 2 or 3 goals that you set for yourself. The purpose of that is for you to build momentum, to start feeling accomplished about succeeding in a specific goal and giving you that motivation, the incentive to keep going. So in order to really get to that momentum point, we have to be able to start. And so because that is one of the most difficult things for someone who suffers from depression to do is to just start. And what I mean by that is just get out of bed, just be able to get in the shower and get dressed and get in the car to head out to where you need to go. So in order to build momentum, you have to start. And you can start anywhere. And don't just feel like beating yourself up because you feel like you've started, but you don't have a lot of stamina. And that is absolutely true that you do not have a lot of stamina because you are just beginning. And so it takes time in order to build the stamina. And let me give you an example. Say that you want to start riding a bicycle, a stationary bicycle in your home. And you start out and you tire after the first 3 minutes. That's because you don't have the stamina built up in order to continue. But over time, your stamina will increase and then the momentum will come. And before long, you will be able to ride that bicycle for 20 minutes without stopping. So we have to get to that momentum point. So what is an area in your life where you feel stagnant, where you feel that you're just not achieving what you set out to achieve? Maybe you've given up on that particular task because you just aren't interested. You just don't have the motivation. Well, we know for certain that it takes at least 14 to 21 days in order to build a habit. And so knowing that, we have to realize that in order to build that momentum and get to that place, we have to be consistent for at least 14 days and beyond. So that means even if you only see an increase of 1 minute every single day, you are still moving forward and making progress. So what is an area in your life where you may need to go back to the drawing board, reframe the plan, and figure out what the next best step is? Sometimes we can't get to the momentum piece because our plan is either too large, there's too many components to it, or it just isn't feasible. So maybe you need to go back and reconstruct the plan in order to get to the momentum that you are seeking. So once we start building the momentum, what do we do next? Well, we decide what exactly the plan is for that particular day. Because I know for me that I tend to work better in mid-afternoon, and so I try to plan my day around completing tasks around that time. But as you build momentum, then you'll be able to branch into other areas and be able to seek out other opportunities that you are wanting to commit to. But I need you to remember that it's difficult to get started because of everything that's going on the inside of your mind. And sometimes our thoughts are discouraging. And so we oftentimes end up not getting to the starting point because we just don't feel like it. And so because we don't feel like it, that's where the pushing comes in, because you can never get to the momentum portion if we don't push, move outside our comfort zone, and do something that we don't feel like doing. Because if we waited around to do something when we felt like it, it's more than likely that we'll never get started. So this is an area and a circumstance in which we have to push ourselves. And I know that most of my podcast episodes talk about pushing, and that's just the reality. Having lived with depression for most of my adult life and being on medication, I really know deeply how hard it is. And so that's why I started the podcast, because I wanted to be able to share with all of my listeners what it is that I do in order to keep going and never stop. And that's why giving up is never an option, because you have to have a decision that is made in your mind that no matter what happens in your life, that you will not quit and give up. You will have setbacks. You will have days when you just don't get out of bed because you can't. But that doesn't mean that you don't try and push yourself the next day. So in order for you to build momentum, you have to start somewhere. In order for you to overcome some of your circumstances, you have to have the belief that you can feel better. Because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that when you think about what your life can be like if you are not having episodes of depression to deal with as often, you will find that life can get better. It will be in slow increments, but that's okay. Because as long as we are maximizing our potential, as long as we are trying our best to do something differently, to look back and evaluate and assess where we are and be willing to take some different steps, to move in a different direction, to make better choices, to prune some of the relationships in our lives that aren't healthy for us. When we are willing to do that, then we can build that momentum. And the idea is, once you build that momentum, continue to write it out every single day and figure out what it is that you need to do to get to the momentum. I never want to end my podcast without thanking you so very much for listening. The next episode will be our 100th episode, and we have a very special guest that will be appearing on that episode. He is an actor and a comedian, and his name is Mark Christopher Lawrence. And you know him from The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith, and he's been in so many other shows. He will be our special guest on our podcast for our 100th episode, and he will share with you not only what he is doing, but his take on mental health and what he knows about how to feel better and to get over the humps in life. So stay tuned for our 100th episode with our special guest. If you would like to become a patron to this channel, please go to www.patreon.com. That's patreon.com. And as little as $5 to $10 per month will help us to continue to grow and to move this podcast to an international level. Thank you so much for being the best part of Win Over Depression, and I will see you on the 100th episode of this wonderful podcast. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Remember, giving up is never an option. Stay in the game of life.